Alright, hello, welcome to a new thing we've got going on. Currently named DM's Discuss because we haven't got a proper name for it yet, basically. I am the DM for the Mercer campaign that is on this channel, and I get to run the very lovely Tuesday and the very lovely Sunday parties as they make their way through the world. I am also a player in another campaign that is run by our lovely Glenn, and that's on this channel as well. That's the pirate airship steampunk craziness one as well, and I have also played in several other campaigns over the years, and I'm currently in another one that has nothing to do with this channel either, and it's not on the internet. So yeah, currently talking to you as a DM and a player, but mostly DM if chosen. And would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yes, I have. My DM experience is a bit more limited than your own, and mostly consists of herding cats in madcap, crazy one-shots or short-form campaigns with new players who like to push the boundaries and test the limits, see what works and what breaks.
Sometimes the DM.
Usually my brain, yes.
And you are Jake.
I am indeed.
And you are a Jake. And I'm a Rosie. You probably have heard my voice before if you are anything to do with this channel. So we have had an interesting couple of weeks. The internet has been rather full. It's always a rather crowded place, the internet, but particularly D&D forums on Facebook, on Reddit, on Twitter, the multiverse at large. They seem to be quite full of discussion, and we would like to jump in on it because we have found a lot to talk about amongst ourselves. Some people talk about it online, some people are happy to respond to comments of varying natures and have a discussion about things. Some people are not, and they shut down comment sections very quickly when they feel like things are not going their way. We will be naming no names on this channel. We will not be putting anything up that references anyone in particular, but it's a little frustrating sometimes because people tend to want to hear their own way, and so we are going to have a discussion amongst ourselves in a very nice and jovial manner. We've got a few topics to talk about. We're going to try and limit it to a couple per video just because we do tend to ramble quite a bit. We're not coming at this from a we are right point of view. Obviously we are, no. We're coming at this from the angle of people who are players and DMs and who love the game D&D and many other games, but we are currently talking about D&D, and we are currently talking about 5th edition as well. We will probably not be getting into too many rules and things like that because my stance on this, and I believe yours as well, Jake, is, well, DM has the final say, but rules lawyers can get very boring. Would you rather just go with a rule that you make up at the time, or would you rather spend half an hour of your beautiful precious time in your session looking something up to make sure you've got it dead on perfect? You know, it's depending on the circumstance. I think I'd rather just get on with playing, so we're not going to get bogged down in rules discussions. I
definitely think one of the best tips that people can ever give new DMs starting out is that if you're not sure of a rule at the table, make a call and go with it. Don't worry about stopping to go through your handbook, your Dungeon Master's Guide, and check the exact wording of a rule as written there and then, because more than anything that slows down the flow of the game. Keep things going. If you check later and find out that actually you read it wrong, doesn't matter. You know for next time. Or you could find that the way you called it made more sense to you and is more fun. You can and you've got a new homebrew rule there and then.
Yeah, definitely. That is the thing I'm a big advocate of, and it's a few people have mentioned it as well, which has very much confused me because I, as a drama student, always worked on what I've called the yes and principle. Apparently other people call it this as well, and this has surprised me and made me feel very happy. It's basically a drama technique in a workshop where somebody in the group says something such as let's all go to the park, and you all say yes and then you all pretend to be at the park, and then someone else says yes and let's have a picnic. So you're still at the park and you have a picnic, and then someone says yes and a storm arrives, so you all have to pretend that your picnic's getting wet, and then yes and we brought our emergency umbrella, so it's all saved, and various things like that. So rather than saying no or but, you say yes and I think that's a much more fun way of playing. Not saying you allow everything, just, maybe there are consequences rather than just an outright no. I find that's a bit more fun to play with, but then hey, not every player is for every table, not every DM is for every table, so I will keep that to a minimum. But yes, so you, Jakey, have a very small list of topics for us to discuss. Which one is first on the agenda for this evening?
I think one I particularly want to talk about right now, and I know it's one that we briefly discussed the other day, is one that I saw come up recently, and it's the matter of, as a DM, is it okay to, shall we say, mess with your players, to be to be pulling a sudden fast one on them, to be altering aspects of their backstory, aspects of their character that they determined when creating them. For example, in a case, let's say you have a cleric who picked a deity, and getting to a point in the campaign, in the story, and revealing to them that in fact their deity was not who they thought it was all along, that they have been deceived, that they've been misled, for example. Is this an okay thing for you as a DM to do?
Mm-hmm. That wasn't my answer, don't worry.
Mm-hmm.
Just
I think that it's an interesting idea. Obviously, a big part of the game that DMs enjoy is weaving that story, that exciting narrative, and a lot of players, not all players, a lot of players do enjoy the story as much as the gameplay mechanics. In some cases, more than the gameplay mechanics.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of your players are much more interested in seeing where events go rather than, the exact. They're more interested in social encounters than combat encounters, for example.
Yeah, and I thank LARPing for that. We are definitely a group of people who either the same amount, we enjoy hacky stab stab, and also, chatty, not stab. Although that does depend. If I had to pick, I would say the Sunday party tend to lean more towards the hacky stab. But that is equally fun.
Sometimes you can have both.
You can have both. When you do not have to pick, you can have both.
But I did. So seeing people discussing this in various online groups, it kind of got me thinking, because I was seeing a lot of support initially. People saying, yes, that's a really exciting idea. That could be really interesting. It could create some cool story beats. And as soon as I read it, I was immediately, I was a little concerned. It's one of those things that just makes you feel a little bit uneasy. Because I immediately think of all the ways that it could go wrong at the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not in terms of, and I wasn't seeing many people coming at it. There were a few people that I saw who kind of had the same opinion as me, but I didn't see many people coming at it from the player point of view. They were thinking purely from a character point of view or narrative point of view.
Yes.
But my concern immediately was, how is the player going to feel when you pull the rug out from under their feet, when you change everything they thought they knew about who their character was, what the character was doing, and when you're potentially forcing them into role-playing a situation that they just not just that they hadn't counted on. Don't get me wrong, I agree that there is a lot of fun can come out of being surprised, of being shocked, but forcing them into a situation which they never really saw themselves doing, and that they don't actually feel that comfortable doing.
Yes.
You can have a player who put together quite a, I don't want to say, I am going to say, but I don't want to say simple character, because that has kind of connotations of, what people associate with the word simple. But you could have somebody who intentionally made a rather mundane, rather straightforward character, and they just wanted to, they want to turn up every session. They want to have some fun. They want to role play with their friends. They want to react to situations that occur, but they don't want to be
front and center, maybe.
Yeah, they don't necessarily want to be front and center. They don't want to be put on the spot. They don't necessarily want things to get too heavy.
Yeah, or at least not for their particular character. Again, different styles of gameplay. You're not going to have everyone at one table thinking, yeah, let's get in on this, rah, rah, rah. Some people are going to be more, laid back about it, or more nervous about it. It's putting yourself out there. It's role playing. If you're at a good table who does a lot of RP, which everyone, each table is different, each player is different. That is fine, but I am a strong advocate of RP as a big part of the game. Otherwise, you may as well be playing a video game. But
Yeah,
again,
or there
different
are
strokes,
simpler,
different folks. But yeah, especially on the RP
there are
angle.
simpler board games. If you're not really into RP, then Hero Quest is a wonderful game. Even after all these years, it is a wonderful game, and I could not recommend it enough. But if you don't want RP and you just want combat, something more like that. So I agree. RP is a big part of the game.
So that's a tangent we will go on to in another video, like combat, RP, how much of balance is balance, etc., etc. When should you draw the line and just tell someone to go and play a video game? Like, this is a conversation I love. But yes, tangent averted. So it's back to back to today's discussion.
I think that I can think of various quite dark subjects that may or may not be out of bounds within any given home game. I know some people like to keep certain topics essentially off the table.
Oh yes, definitely, which obviously should be discussed at the beginning, session 0, but then of course people might not foresee that. It might be something you have no idea could possibly come up, like as we said, this twisting of something for your players that they never saw coming. How can you prepare for that and warn the DM in advance? It's not something you're okay with.
Yeah, I think if you let's go back to this idea. If someone's created quite a mundane character and they're turning up just to have fun, to roll dice with their friends, to to have some silly interactions, maybe occasionally some dramatic interactions, and if you as a DM then suddenly reveal to them that everything in their backstory, they might have given you just this little nubbin of a backstory, this little starting point, this simple life, and they didn't really think about, for example, what happened to their parents, or this long lost sibling that they haven't seen for a long time, or and then you come in and reveal this great Machiavellian scheme whereby all of the most awful things have happened either to them or around them.
Yeah.
And now you're putting that in their face. You're going, right, now role play that. And this person is that thing of, I never turned up to do something this intense.
Yes.
And now suddenly you're looking at me, expecting me to react, not just react, but react in character.
Yeah, because you can't ignore that. Once a plot hammer like that has been dropped, you can't. Well, you can, but if you're going to be acting in character, you can't just ignore it and shrug it off and act completely normal again. It is something that, as a what I would call good player, you would react to that, you would roleplay that, it would come up. It's not something that can be just forgotten about. So it is going to have a bigger effect than people realise, particularly on one character. Yeah.
The old alternative is to just kind of ignore it and pretend like it never happened.
Yeah.
But that's going to feel weird. That's going to be...
Yeah.
Either way, it's going to leave a bit of an odd taste in the player's mouth.
Yeah, definitely.
Or... for the other example, like I mentioned earlier, maybe, you're playing a cleric and you found out that this deity that you've been worshipping all along is in fact something entirely other. That has, that you've been deceived, you've been misled in that regard.
And I think at this point, it's only fair to sort of drop we don't want this to turn into a critical role discussion, but this has been a big, what about the Traveller? What about Jester thing? Which is sort of where a lot of this has come from. And I don't want to dive into that too much, but it's a very big thing people are talking about. And
let's not beat around the bush. I think this, this is what has generally spawned this discussion.
This
is the matter
one,
of
definitely, yes.
Who is the Traveller? What is their true nature? And we don't want to make this whole critical role discussion, partly because some people, they might not be familiar with critical role, and let's not exclude them from following along just because they're not up to date with all of this.
No spoilers here, people. The only spoiler is in campaign 2 there is a Jester and she worships the Traveller and we don't know who he is. It's not really a spoiler. It's the same as session 1. As of
For people that don't watch, that could actually be a little confusing. There is a cleric called Jester, just for anyone who is envisioning your literal.
Oh yes, and she's a girl. She's a blue tiefling and she dresses very nice. And I don't want to get copyrighted from Laura Bailey, so I'm not.
Wonderful.
She's wonderful. she's wonderful, and anyone who hates on her is a very boring person. No, I encourage everyone. You can like whoever you want, but bless her, she's lovely. She's absolutely lovely.
But we are not partisan.
No, no, we're not.
She follows a very mysterious deity. At this stage, to the viewers, certainly,
Traveler.
very little is known about this, about this entity, about their motivations, about their origin.
Yeah. Oh, and we will add in this as well that it has been clarified the Traveler as a deity does exist in D&D lore, but this one has been stated by Matt Mercer, which is the Dungeon Master who runs the Critical Role campaign. I feel weird saying that, like everyone should know this, everyone. He has stated that this is not necessarily the same deity that is described. However, I feel like this has been curveballed a little bit and people have taken this and run with it, in my opinion, a little too far, in that because it's not the same, it must be evil, and that's going to be the big twist. And I'm just thinking, why does it got to be, you know, to do a sort of RuPaul Drag Race-esque, like, why it got to be evil though? Like, I feel like that's a step too far. And like, they're a great cast, so in this sense, I wouldn't say the player would have a problem particularly necessarily, because I think they're all amazing. They will go with everything that happens, and they will take things and run with them. That doesn't mean they should. Like, in my opinion, as a DM, I think my stance on this, particularly in this circumstance, is I think it wouldn't be the right thing to do because it's already happened. Another part of the campaign. Now, this is with the least spoilers possible, something very similar has happened to another character in campaign 2, and I feel like having it happen again would be rather boring. That's my stance.
Yes.
My particular stance on that particular circumstance of twisting it for a particular player, aka the Traveller and Jester, is just, well, it's already happened to another character, so why do it again? There are many other circumstances, and as a DM, my stance is you don't have to push it that far to throw a twist on a player. It doesn't have to be, you know, their deity isn't who they thought they were. Their sister, something horrible's happened to their sister. That thing doesn't have to be evil. You know, a good twist doesn't have to be the worst thing imaginable. Just rein it back a little bit. You know, a good twist can be just, you know, it can be what were we saying the other day? It can be a moral quandary. Like, and you said something really good that I really enjoyed. I don't know if you remember, but I wrote it down because I thought it was really interesting. And you said that a good twist isn't necessarily an outright evil one, because then the choice that is the reaction the player would have and the character would have is very black and white. It's, do I turn evil, or do I ignore this, or essentially kick this away and start again? Essentially creating a brand new, like, you've got to go looking for another deity, or you've got to ignore that part of your backstory, whatever it is that's going on. Whereas a better twist, in your opinion, and I agree with you, both of your opinion, would be something smaller, a moral quandary, because let's face it, good and evil as a decent player, and by this I mean a decent character, so a neutral or good character, would probably not choose to turn evil if their deity turns out to be evil. Therefore, the choice is moot because it's simple. It's, well, you're evil, so essentially this hurts, but goodbye forever. That may have repercussions, but the choice itself is easy. Whereas I like what you said to me the other day, a moral quandary, where they're not evil, but they might not be quite what you thought. You know, like a lawful good paladin. God, I'm making this up on the spot. A lawful good paladin is following a deity who he believes is lawful good, but actually they turn out to be neutral good, and they encourage it. So it's not a massive change, and it's not so much the alignment that is the problem. Maybe it's just a thing that they are asked to do by the deity, or something they do doesn't quite line up with the deity, and they come into conflict over that, and so they have that moral decision of, well, actually, am I thinking about this the wrong way, or actually should I just follow my deity blindly, or actually should we, you know, something that involves more of like a discussion or an impact, or like you said, a moral. There's no better way to describe it. I think you said, I wrote it down, I've got it in front of me, the moral choice rather than just a black and white yes no, which I think can be applied to everything, not just the, and we'll mention it like very few times more, but the Critical Role thing at the moment that everyone seems to be talking about. I think, yes, I think it would be very black and white, and it would be repetitive. But if we ignore the fact that it would be repetitive, I think that a very black and white choice would be more boring than a moral twist. and
yes,
breathe.
it becomes a very. I agree, and I do remember saying this. Yes, it becomes a very binary decision. Stay or go. To kind of elaborate on your example, it's that thing of, a lawful good paladin discovering that their deity is in fact chaotic evil, and they're saying, "Oh, well, I will help you. I will give you the power to. I'll continue giving you the power to follow your quest through, but I'm going to eat 1,000 babies as a result." And it's an exaggerated example, but
Yes,
it's that thing
yes.
of, well, the
But that's
lawful
the
good
point. It's
paladin's
the
going to go, right,
exaggerated
well,
version.
this,
Yes.
they don't have. You want to give them a situation. You want to give the player a situation which they really have to mull over, potentially over multiple sessions. They have to kind of decide, how do I feel about this?
Yes.
If you throw this situation at them where it's that thing of, I will help you, but in return you will help me, you will expand my influence, and innocence will suffer. Well, this lawful good character, they're going to look at this situation and just go, well, that's so out of character for me. The player is not going to have any qualms about their decision, and as opposed to, you could have something more interesting, more potentially more ambiguous about whether it's a good or a bad thing. I'm trying to think
And
of examples off the top of my head. But
I know it's very hard to think of a better example because it's almost like
more
anything.
ambiguous is that it is a bit more nuanced, a bit more layered,
Yes.
and takes a bit more thought. And as a result, takes a bit more thought on the player's behalf. And I do want to go back to what you're saying as well, actually, about the fact that this is something that has happened to another person. A good twist is not, for one thing, it's one thing to have a theme. It's one thing to have this kind of narrative theme that is layered throughout a campaign that keeps getting returned to. But simply repeating the same plot points but with different characters is not the same as having a good overarching theme.
No, definitely.
But also,
and then you run the risk of not only becoming boring but becoming far too obvious.
Stale.
I think it would get like,
predictable.
I wonder what's going to happen. Like, I think what you could think is, maybe all the other players who've got a deity are going to go, oh god, maybe they're lying to me too. But what you're actually going to get is them, when the big reveal comes, that they're, yes, your deity's lying to you as well. It's, oh gosh, what a surprise, I'm so shocked. It's not going to have the impact that they possibly think it will.
On that note as well, you also run the risk of players becoming unintentionally a little bit metagamey and paranoid. If they've seen 2 or 3 of their fellow players all go through this same story beat with either their chosen deity or their liege lord, or whoever they look up, could just be a mentor, could be a close friend from their backstory.
Yep.
If they keep seeing this same plot point happen to other players in their group, they start to doubt their own. They're like, I see where we're going here. They get paranoid. They start to expect it in their own situation. So that could then affect how they actually interact with that aspect of their own character.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's say every time your fourth character in line for this kind of thing, now whenever they interact with the wizard that taught them all the spells they know, and every time they meet them, they're thinking, is this guy fucking me?
Yes.
Is he messing with me? Is there some ulterior motive? I'm now going to be insight checking everything that they say. I'm going to be second guessing all of everything that they
when they wouldn't have been
tell
before.
me, or every bit of help they give me, and that's going to take away from everyone's experience. And if the reveal then is the case of they were right, they're going to go, oh yep, saw that one coming, and that's
a very different type of, I saw that one coming. Because you could do it where you've had, and we talked about this as well, rather than having a big plot reveal that no one could have guessed because it's literally this good thing turns ultimate evil, or, another horrible example of, something absolutely horrendous happening that we won't go into because I don't want to think of more horrible things. But instead, if you dial it back and you have something else, then it's more impactful, and it can have more story beats, and it won't be
I think a good satisfying twist isn't something that is, a good twist can be shocking.
Yes.
but I don't think that a good twist should be something that comes completely out of the blue.
No,
With
like
no warning.
crumbs
Something that,
should be
yeah,
spread.
something that does a complete U-turn, a whole 180 on everything that's happened so far, is not a good twist. It's that whole... If you're left looking at it going, well, there's absolutely no way anyone could have seen that coming. No way
Yeah.
whatsoever.
It's almost less of a twist and more of a jump scare without the scary music to build up to it. It's literally just someone jumps in your face and goes, a bloogie boogie woo. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
well, that left a very strange impact, and okay, that was a bit sudden and out of the blue and random. Whereas if you've been hearing creaking floorboards and the taps stop dripping and the wind made no noise outside and, you know, just little things have been slowly, like, and the last thing I will say about the Traveller and Jester, the last thing is I personally, as a DM and as a player, if I was in her situation, if I was in my situation, I would enjoy it more if the Traveller, if it turned out to be someone she'd seen before, or, as I said before, not just that, maybe had sort of taken on forms of people who she'd very minorly interacted with. That to me is like breadcrumbs being spread, and then, you know, a big reveal, for want of a better word, could be, you know, she finds out, well, I was always with you, I was always watching you, and then he flashes her back, or it describes all these times he was there. Maybe he sold her a donut one time, maybe he was the person who you know, picked up a book when she dropped it. Little things. You know, that to me as a player would be way more impactful than any sort of twist, good or bad, that is just too big and random. I prefer little things that build up. Maybe you don't see it coming because you didn't pick up on all the little crumbs, but they were there. And when you look back through it, you go, oh, wow. Like a good movie, when you watch it the second time and you pick back up on everything and go, oh, shit, how did we not see this coming? But you still didn't, but you enjoyed it.
It's a twist like that. It gives the player that moment of satisfaction when they look back and they see all of these points of foreshadowing, however subtle they were. It gives them that kind of, that feeling of, wow, that is, you know, it makes sense now.
And as a player, it would make me feel very important and satisfied with my DM. Like, oh my god, you put so much effort into this story for me. It's been going so long.
I think a good example. I think a really good example, actually, and spoilers for the second season of Black Mirror. If you haven't seen it, it's been out years. What are you doing?
Spoilers for second episode of Black Mirror, second season of Black Mirror. Tune back in like a few minutes or so.
This was the episode that you showed me, the episode called White Bear. Now, and I'll talk about this afterwards. Now, it's that thing of, and I'm almost going to argue against myself here in a little way, because I remember saying to you after the episode was over that there was no way that the first time watching that you can accurately guess. Sorry, you could accurately guess, of course. 1 in a million chance. There's no way that watching that
please
episode...
Please don't bombard us in the comments with people going, well, I guessed, I knew what was going on, I'm just really clever. It's like, okay, good for you.
Sure you
Not
did.
the point we're trying to make here. but well done, you are very clever.
Based on all of the little clues it gives you, and there are some, you know, comments made, ways that the main character is acting, things that they're feeling, little flashes, little kind of very brief little flashes that get interspersed throughout the episode. Even with all that, I don't think anyone could reasonably accurately predict the reveal at the end.
Yes, and I don't think you're meant to.
You're not meant to. That's kind of the point. But when you do learn the true nature of what's been going on at the end, every little thing from the start of the end right up and from the start of the episode right up to the end all falls into place.
Yes, definitely.
So the whole time your brain is churning over, thinking, "What's going on here? What's going on there?" You know, it's provoking you to be trying to guess and to be trying to figure it out. And then when it does finally reveal, like it's both that your mind is both blown by the fact of I did not see that coming, but then you feel that satisfaction in that thing that you just watched. All of the pieces falling into place. I'd say there's also a bit of another example in that film, The Ritual. In that there's all these little...
The Ritual. I think it's still on Netflix. Go check it out. Unless you don't like monsters, in which case maybe give it a minute.
You're being terrified. But again, there are just these little hints throughout that aren't super obvious, but also aren't super cryptic.
Yeah.
So that by the end of the film, when you, again, spoilers if you haven't seen the film and you don't want to know, then tune out for a few minutes. When you learn about the village of essentially the hippie commune, people
That's such
isolating
a really good
themselves
way of
deep in the
putting it. The
woods. I
fucking
mean, they
hippie
are
commune.
basically a bloodthirsty hippie commune that worship this monster. It makes a lot of sense. The cabin that they find earlier, all the little totems that were laid throughout
Yes. Yes.
the
Yes.
woods. It's all things that go, yeah, you could be surprised at this development without feeling completely blindsided.
Yes.
And I think that's important, kind of reining back from this slight tangent. That's what's important in plot development. It's not that thing of, and I know you said, that's the last thing you're going to say of Roll and Jester.
Well, it's the last thing I'm going to say. You can mention
I'm going to say soon. If it's that thing of, oh, it turns out that, all along you were following a great unspeakable evil. It's that thing of, wow, that was genuinely. We've never gotten any hint of that. The Traveller is capricious and mischievous, but he's not cruel. And
Yes.
I don't think you can just justify it by saying, oh, well, this demon is playing this very clever game of manipulation. There was nothing to indicate it. There's no crumbs. It would just be this very sudden and abrupt change in tone that I think would actually leave not just the players, but the viewers sat there going, wait, what?
And I also think it would be unnecessary. Not just because of my main stance on this being, it's already happened, guys, let's not do it again. But if you ignore that one, then it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary to her character arc. It is unnecessary to the story as a whole, just that kind of a big reveal. It's unnecessary. Now, I'm going to put a caveat here and say, if it happens, I'm not going to be pissed. I'm still going to watch the show. I'm still going to love it. But I just don't think it's necessary.
But let's also, go back to the impact just on a player.
Yes, we will now divulge away from talking about that particular Critical Role thing.
Yes, but kind of still using that as an example. Is that a fun change?
Oh,
for the
yes.
character? Is that sudden? They've chosen to play this certain character. They've picked this deity accordingly. They're having a lot of fun with it. They're enjoying this aspect of them. I am going to keep mentioning it. Jester loves playing pranks. She loves being mischievous. She gets so much mileage out of that, so much enjoyment. You can see the satisfaction on her face every time she gets to go on one of these escapades. Where is the joy in pulling that away from her so suddenly?
Yeah.
Where is the satisfaction in the session?
I know a lot of people would scream character development, but you can develop a character in other ways. The character doesn't. Well, I'll say two things. One, not all characters need to develop. Sometimes characters are pretty damn well perfect how they are, and it's more they learn things as they go through the story. Like, not every character has to have an arc where they start one way and they change into something else. They
don't need to change into something completely different. Learning different things does not mean becoming someone entirely different.
Yeah, having experiences and growing up and making friends and forming relationships and things. Yes, all of that development, definitely. But an outright massive change is unnecessary. And this is for everything across the board.
Very important for any DM to bear in mind is you might have this idea in your head of where you've got to play a character, they're a certain way. You might have this idea in your head, they should be like this. They should have this kind of growth. They should end up being this kind of a person instead. Cool. I get where that's coming from, this place of you're excited by this idea of a character development and all that. That's not your call to make. You are not that character. You are not that player. You are not there to... You are not there to take and mold your players.
You're not there to play. I always argue.
Loosely, I think. But your play is a different kind of play, and it is not your place to mold player characters into who you want them to be. That is up to the players.
Yes.
They decide who these people end as.
I think that swings around to what we mentioned earlier. The main point for this, and this is all across the board in terms of the general question of, is it all right for, or not just is it all right, but how much is all right for a DM to lie, manipulate, trick any of his players or her players? And I would say that my main point with that is that how much would the player agree with? Now, I wouldn't say you have to tell your players every twist. Definitely not. You don't need to tell them that. But you do need to have some sort of permission from your player. Now, I have some wonderful players who have said to me when they were giving me backstories, they have given me a loose framework and gone, do whatever you want, I don't care. Make it crazy, make it fun, make it dark, I don't care. I've also had other players who have given me an exact backstory and said, this is what happened, this is the people. And I've said, cool, awesome, I'm not going to mess with that. You know, I'm going to bring it up in an interesting way in the game, but I'm not going to mess with it. And then you have other players who give you not a lot, and they don't want to engage in their backstory. They want to create a character who just plays through the game. Not every character needs to have something from their past come up to haunt them or come up as a challenge, you know? Like,
so much that, yes.
Player permission is important to me, big time.
And for that third type of player you mentioned, never assume that that's a sign of a bad or unengaged player. Someone who turns up and they haven't brought this big backstory. They might have given you just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't. Now, this might mean that they are quite content to be, as Colville describes, you know, more of an audience member. They want to be there. They want to kind of be part of it. But they're happy to sit back and watch things unfold before them.
For anyone who hasn't watched it, go find Matt Colville's video on the different types of players. It's fascinating.
Or just anything by Colville, really.
Or just anything by Colville.
But they might.
I'll put links in the description. Carry on.
They might be waiting to see what the story throws at them. I know that from a player point of view, I'm actually quite excited by the idea of, and this isn't dumping on people who like to write a big involved backstory, but I've certainly over time grown to prefer the idea of coming with actually more of a minimal backstory. I don't necessarily want a recurring rival from my past. I would rather turn an NPC into a rival, someone that we meet along the way. I would rather make the story as I go rather than having my character's story dictated by things that happened before the campaign began.
Yeah,
that's just true. Kind of my take on it.
Sorry, dog's making noises.
In regards to the second type of player you mentioned, the type of player who turns up with a very precise, very exact backstory. These are all the beats. This is what happened. This is what happened. You know, no ifs and buts. If you as a DM, if there's anything in that you think you might want to change, that you might want to be different, that is the time to say. That is the time to bring it up and talk about it.
Yes.
Do not.
And that's the circumstance under which it's okay to do so, because again, you don't want to spoil things you're bringing up for your players. Absolutely, I am on board with this. I'm not saying, you know, well, tell your players everything in advance, or tell one of them in advance so that they can, you know, make sure it's okay. But particularly for all players, but bringing up those two, the minimal and the maximum backstory givers. So the maximum backstory, yes, it's very important to ask them if you can change things, because they've taken the time and effort to give you this backstory. They've come up with names and characters and people and emotions.
At the same time, you've taken the time to craft a world. And if there's something about their backstory that you know straight away isn't actually going to fit with your world, that's fine. That's reasonable. Yeah. And it's okay to talk to them about, look, can we actually change a couple of things here?
Tweak it around a little bit, and I would argue tweak your world a little bit, because, you know, you're the DM. But I would argue, yes, give and take and tweak. But yes, this in terms of changing their story, that it is their story, and you definitely need their permission before you change anything around with that. Or at least you don't need to tell them what it is you'll change, but you need to have their permission to do it. For example, if you were going to do an example that isn't to do with deities, because we talked about that one too much. Their father is going to turn out to have killed their mother, or something like that. Now, if they haven't stated it, they might have said their mother went missing. And at that point, you say to them, okay, is there anything you would like to have happened to your mother? Do you have any ideas for that? Or are you literally wanting me to just come up with something? And if they say, yeah, go with anything, At that point, you ask the secondary question. You say, okay, how dark are you happy to go with this? Because again, the mother might have just got lost somewhere. The mother might have turned into a fey creature. Good things can have happened to the mother as well, people. Like,
It
good
could have,
things
yeah.
do happen.
And it could be that even in asking that first question, you could, they could say, oh, no, anything. And, you could go, okay, right. So, yeah, we can have some kind of parent murdering the other parent. There might be some cross wires, some miscommunication there where they've assumed that everything, they might think that they're going to meet their mum again at some point. They might be counting on that. They're like, yeah, do anything with it, because they're hoping that they're going to bump into her and she's now a great wizard or, Kingsguard or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's that.
Yes, exactly.
You've got to clarify.
So you have to clarify.
Clarify.
Again, without necessarily spoiling things. I'm very big on not spoiling things for your players if you can help it, because it is more fun. As a player, I would say I found it more fun when things are not spoiled for me. However, some of the most fun sessions I have had have also been spoiled for me with good reason. I won't go into details, but I played one particular session which was all RP, and it was to do with one character I was playing's backstory. And it was very engaging for me because I knew some of the things that were going to happen, because I had to have a conversation with the DM about it first. He had said, is this all right? And I had said to him, yes, but you do realise that if that happens, my player will react this way, not that way. And he'd said, that's cool, good to know. That means that this might happen, just so you're aware. And I was like, yeah, that's okay. And what ended up happening was a lot of terrible things happened to my character. But I was pre-warned of it, and I knew that I was going to take it well, and I was making the decision, and my DM knew I was making the decision for my character, and I was making an in-character choice that in-game and out-of-game, the player knew the consequences, the character did not, but he knew there might be some. But more importantly, I enjoyed being forewarned in that circumstance because I felt I could RP better with it and I knew what was coming. Whereas if I was the type of player who would not have enjoyed that, it could have been thrown at me anyway, and that would have been a horrible experience both as a character and as a player. I think you can't underestimate how upset a player might be if something, not necessarily terrible, but unexpected or violent or bad happens to their player or another player. I'm not going to get into Triggered or anything, but just in general, people get attached to their characters. Again, in the broad sense, good players get attached to their characters, Like, again, if you're not attached to your characters, that is fine, whatever. You play your game, that is fine. I will happily have you at my table as long as you're not an absolute idiot. But in my experience, the people who I have had more impactful relationships with in-game and as a DM have been more attached to their characters. So you can't underestimate the fact that if something bad happens to their character, they are going to feel it too. Which means that getting their permission is important. And it's the same if they've got a minimal backstory as well. I mean, sometimes even more so, because the maximum backstory people, they've given you everything. And that means you've got only a few things that you could potentially be swapping around and you can talk to them about it in depth. Whereas someone who's given you minimal backstory, you might think as a DM, free reign, I can do whatever. But again, you need to make sure that they actually want it to come up. And you also have to make sure that if you are planning something, you say to them, what are your levels for this? Is there anything that you would like me to discuss? I always say to my players, every so often I'll say to them, is there something you would like to happen? I'm not going to make it happen, but I would like to know where you are heading. As a character, where do you think they're heading? What are they thinking right now? And if they say something to me that I was going to bring up, I will make sure it comes up. Maybe in a different way to the way they were expecting, obviously, but it's nice to know that you are doing the right thing, because I am always of the opinion players come first and characters come first, So whatever level of backstory they've given you, it's very important that you respect that, because you said a brilliant word the other day and I loved it. You said the DM should never take away the player or the character's agency.
Yes.
And that's a big one.
Yes, I mean, obviously, people often refer to it as railroading in a campaign, when players feel like whatever they do, it doesn't matter, they're going to end up in the same place anyway. I think, having watched Mercer quite a bit, I think, and I could be completely wrong here, but I think he doesn't railroad. What he does is quite masterful. And I'm sure many DMs do this. I'm not saying that Mercer is the only guy who does this.
No.
Nor that he originated it or anything, but if it's a really clear, easy to see example of this being done well, is moving the goals.
Yes.
Moving objectives around so that it doesn't. you've got this idea of something you want to happen. Well, let the players choose how they, where they want to go, how they want things to pan out. And if you've got something particular that you definitely wanted to happen, you keep it loose. You keep the circumstances, the details flexible, and then you can put it where you need it to be.
Yes, exactly.
So
Whether
that they
it's an
will run into it.
encounter or a thing.
And that
you
way
can
your
move
players, they keep their feeling of agency. And you as a DM, you get to plan a fair bit in advance and make sure the beats that you're interested in giving your players actually happen without anyone feeling like their hands are forced, like they don't have a say in what's going on.
Yes, which would be, for me, the worst case scenario of tricking your players. Not only do you trick them in such a way that they're unhappy with it in and out of game, or both or either, but you also trick them in such a way that they feel they are forced to make a decision that they don't want to make, or they are forced into making a decision at all.
Yes.
Some players and characters would want to walk away from something, but you might have done something that's so big that they feel that they only have one or maybe two options and they don't like either of them. Now, a lot of people make jokes about the fact that your players always do things that you don't expect, but sometimes they feel like they only have a few options, and that is never okay. Again, Colville has said many times that he will write an encounter or a problem, but he won't write the solution. And the players can come up with many different ways, and if he feels like it's right, we'll do some checks, but it might work. I think it's a very similar thing with a twist. Like, if you're going to pull a big stunt like that, and it is pulling a stunt, then you need to make sure that whatever the outcome is, you haven't just planned it, that this will happen, and it's going to blow their minds, and then this, because they'll have to do this. I think as a DM, it's very dangerous if you ever find yourself thinking, and then they'll have to, reimagine what you are doing a little bit, because it's not your story.
A better way of looking at that, a better way of going about that is, let's say that this scenario, the kind of loose scenario that you just outlined, involves the big bad and what they're going to do. Don't think of it in terms of, and then this will happen, so that the players have to deal. Gonna waffle around this one, but think of it purely in along the lines of, this is kind of going what Colville says, is this is what the big bad is going to do. This is their action.
Yes.
But don't decide what it is the players need to do to deal with it.
Yes.
You just decide what events are going to happen in your world. And then you just have to roll with however your players choose to deal with it. And this is how Critical Role ended up with a session which involved everyone turning into cows.
And it was glorious.
You don't, as a DM, you do not plan for this.
Vox Machina, I think was what they were called.
It was. You do not plan for this. You roll with it. Literally.
I think literally that's the thing. I think particularly with the big twists is, I'm not saying don't do them. I'm not saying you can't play with backstories. I'm not saying that there are any rights and wrongs to this magical game of ours that we play. But I think my big thing would be player permission or player consent, however you want to put it. Make sure there's a point to it. If the only reason you're doing it is to shock your players and it impacts the story only to be an impact, maybe reconsider again, because not everything has to be such a big shock. There can be reason behind it as well. And if something's
Absolutely.
going to be such a big shock, then make sure there's a good and valid reason behind it.
And and if I could, re-emphasize just some final thoughts on my part, is, as you were saying just a little while ago, don't underestimate how much your players get attached to their characters. Don't underestimate the emotional investment that your players are putting in, that you want them to put in. Really, that's a good thing. But I say this as a player who I can think of multiple times where I have, I myself have cried as a result of a development, something that's happened to my character. And it can happen without you even realizing it. You don't. I wasn't, certainly the first time it happened, I was not expecting to react in that way. But things happened, and I learned just how much I cared for my character in that instance. Do not underestimate your players' emotional investment with their characters. And if you don't know that player well, if it's your first time DMing for that player, this is your first run with them and you've never seen how they react to something like this before. I appreciate this is a little bit of a paradox. If you don't throw a situation at them like that, then you can't know how they react. But that's where you don't, try and gauge. If you're thinking of throwing a twist like this at a player, try and think about times when similar things have happened to NPCs, to other players that they've witnessed, and how did they react, both as a character, but most importantly, how did they react as a player? Because if you don't know them well, if you're not sure how they're going to take it, the most important thing for a DM is that everyone walks away from your table having enjoyed themselves after every session.
Amen.
And if you throw something so dramatic and life-changing at a character that the player is hit by it, then they're not going to walk away happy from that. They're going to leave your table that night. They're going to feel demoralized, dejected. They're going to, they can easily feel like they've had a part of them torn out.
And worst case scenario, you could lose a player.
You could lose a player, and whatever dramatic, shocking twist you had planned, is it really worth that? What's more important is that you all keep playing and keep having fun together.
Oh, we're gonna finish on like final very sweet thoughts now, which I like. I would just I'd roll on the back of that. I would say I would never tell someone how to run their game, and I would never tell someone how to play. All I can do is advise, and all I would say in this circumstance, my opinion as a fairly fresh DM. I haven't been DMing for 30 years. I haven't been alive for 30 years. I have experience as a LARPer, a story writer, and a drama student, and a DM and a player. And going off of all of that, I just say permission and consent is so important if you're doing something big. Whether it's good or bad, you could be thinking a really big twist that's going to turn out to be really, really good. Still might not be what they want. Maybe they want their character to, go down a darker route or a sadder route or a more somber route. Or maybe they just don't want anything big to happen to their character. Maybe they are happy to play the slightly more humble character who isn't big and outlandish or has anything huge happen to them in particular. They'd rather be a part of the party and that's it. They don't need their time in the sun. They don't need to have 3 weeks or 5 sessions dedicated to them and their backstory. Check that first. And because feelings can change. They may change one way or the other. And I would also say, bear in mind that it's not... The story you're weaving as a dungeon master is not for you. It's for your players. And they are the people who have to enjoy it.
And the story that you've got in mind is not as important as your players having fun. And if that means you need to change what you had planned, I think then you have to accept that.
I think if that means you have to throw out an entire scrapbook of ideas, just don't throw them out. Just put them on the back burner or have them saved for another campaign. And I think, player enjoyment comes first. That's not saying that you should have no fun as a DM. No, absolutely not. You should all be having fun. However, my personal feeling is that your players come absolutely top of this, and if they in any way, big or small, might not enjoy it, maybe just rethink. And that's not me saying you should just give them everything they want and never anything bad should happen. No, definitely not. They entered into this, they are the heroes, bad things will happen. But there's a difference between playing a hero who has encounters and experiences and has to go through the world and completely blindsiding them with something that's so out there, ridiculous, or downright horrible that it feels pointless and it was just for shock value. Because maybe you as a DM will enjoy their shocked faces, and maybe some players do. Some players probably will enjoy that, but you have to make sure they're going to. Because it's better to find out beforehand and change your mind than it is to potentially lose players or an entire game because you judge that twist wrong. And I think that, again, my final thought would be players come first. You get good players from very good DMs, and you can both work together to get that. And I think you need to remember that. So, twists are okay as long as they're done in the right situation, in the right circumstance, and to the right players and their characters. That was our to be fair, that was a very short version of our massive discussion about this particular topic. Next time, that was the short version. Yeah, we've had hours at this. next time we are going to be talking natural 20s, I believe. Natural 20s and what was the secondary thing? It was natural 20s and whether they are an auto success. Natural 20s, auto successes, and
highly contentious topic.
So yeah, natural 20s, auto success, and something else to do with that.
Unprompted rolls.
Ah, yes. Rolling etiquette,
rolls.
whether you're at the table or online. So we'll be talking dice next time. Essentially, we're talking dice, either real or online dice. Natural 20s, whether they are auto successes, and rolling etiquette, whether you should roll before the DM asks, etc., etc. So,
where I hope to take a stance that offends both sides at the same time.
And I will attempt to be my lovely, cheerful, and happy clappy self because I'm a happy DM and I refuse to change. So yes, thank you anyone who listened. This has been, for want of a title, DMs Discuss is what we're going with at the moment. So come gather around our campfire in the tavern and pull up a seat next time, and we will be discussing dice. So thank you, Jake, for coming and chatting about this.
Thank you for having me.
That's all right. And so yeah, till next time, see y'all later. Enjoy the rest of the content on the channel. Bye.